Okay, so we are back. Should be pretty good volume-wise. Let me know in the chat if there's any issues with any settings. But there's a very interesting stream that I would like to discuss today. Actually, it is a panel discussion, and it is between Sabine Hossenfelder. I believe it's Sabine. If it's not Sabine, then it's Sabina. I've heard everybody says it differently, so I apologize if I got that wrong. But I've heard even arguments over what was her name, and there was no conclusion from what I've seen. But Eric Weinstein, Brian Greene, and Michael Shermer. And I believe it's Sabine. But it was a great stream, and it was on this channel right here, the Institute of Art and Ideas. And it is this stream right here that we're going to be discussing, The End of Everything. And it says, the quest for a theory of everything. And it's this panel. And it's not very long. It's only about an hour. But there's some absolutely essential moments in this stream that I thought were great. And I want to go over them. This stream will probably be much shorter than some of the other ones, but we'll see, because I say that all the time. But to get started, just to kind of as some housekeeping announcements, I guess. These streams will go up, and then over the next day or two, I will be adding all of the timestamps and, the thumbnail and all kinds of finishing touches that have not been added in the past. I did come up with a more standard thumbnail and also a more standardized way of just doing the timestamps. So those will be included on the weekly streams from here on. I know I've said that before, but the problem with our weekly streams in the past is that they went on for too long to do that every single time. We were doing 2 of them a week, not 1, and they were also not on a standardized, topic or format, and these ones are. So it's much, much easier, and I think that that's really valuable. The last one, if you'd like to see the format for this and have any remarks or comments on how to improve anything, you can look at last week's stream, which was on Kurchai Mungal and Jordan Peterson's discussion on theories of everything. I put the new thumbnail on there that's standardized, but will be able to be just also individualized by adding screenshots. So that will occur on this one as well. This one might be a little bit more unique. We'll see. It's tough because this one has 4 people speaking, and I got to figure out how to get everybody's faces in there instead of just 2. But I'll figure it out as we go on. I really do think that thumbnail works well enough for now. I'm not a graphic designer, but the timestamps are super helpful, even for me, to just be able to go back and reference and make clips and things like that. So we're going to do that with this one. Again, though, it's not going to be done always the next day, but it will be done that week. If it takes a couple days, then that's what it takes. I don't have anybody on some team helping me with this. This is just me, so it happens when it happens, but it will happen. So with that, let's get to the stream of today. As I said, this is the video that we're going to be discussing, and it's called The End of Everything on the thumbnail, which is not what the title is. But here we go.
Seen as a hunt for a theory of everything, a single grand narrative that explains it all. In recent times, science has had its own supporters for a theory of everything.
Hold on. going a little fast because I was listening to it. There we go.
Yet, no theory of everything in philosophy or science is forthcoming. And is it even possible? It would have to, after all, include itself. Can we conceive of a universe that also includes its causes and its laws? Can a universe have no before or after, no outside? And isn't a theory of everything itself bounded by its particular culture, its language, and its mode of thinking? So, should we abandon the dream of a theory of everything, simply see it as an illusion born of a hubris? Is the mistake not with the idea of a full explanation, but with the idea of everything, or as the Greeks would have said, the one? Or is it just possible that, as Stephen Hawking once believed, a theory of everything is just around the corner? Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Professor Catherine Haymans. I am the Astronomer Royal for Scotland, and it is my great pleasure tonight to host The End of Everything. And we will be answering the question, should we abandon the dream of a theory of everything? I have 4 amazing...
Okay. Lots to discuss here in just the very beginning. So, one thing that's of note that she said is that she said that a theory of everything has to contain itself. And this is something that I honestly, and very surprisingly, had not heard other people other than myself discuss very often up until this discussion, in which it comes up multiple times. And this is an obvious, it's not obvious because it's not, no other theory has this requirement other than a quote-unquote theory of everything. But it is obvious once you realize, what your task is that this is a requirement. And this is something that I've stated about, that is, a part of my own work as well, is that the theory that you are proposing must be almost innately written into the laws and the structure of the theory that you are proposing. And this kind of circular self-referencing also is a hint as to what is the foundational structure of reality. It's some type of self-referential structure. And this is something that is pretty unique amongst theories, and not even pretty unique, totally unique. Every other theory in science is predicated upon previously instantiated and deduced and laws that have already been just agreed upon by society. And this is not true of a theory of everything. And it's part of the reason why it's so hard to get one accepted, is because it has to be predicated on itself. Which is tough. And everything else has to emerge from it, which is, you can do, but convincing people to pay attention long enough for them to realize how to look at this properly, at least your proposal properly, to allow for what is currently known to emerge naturally from what you're proposing, takes time, because you cannot predicate it on anything that has been previously deduced. You can't build it on the standard model. The standard model must emerge from it. You can't build it on general relativity. General relativity must emerge from it. You can't build it on the theory of evolution. Evolution must emerge from it, and it must fill in the gaps and all of these things that we currently, have in our societal pursuit of truth agreed upon as standard. And another thing that she says is that it must include its own cause. Okay? And we don't, this is why the definition of a theory of everything as it just uniting quantum mechanics and general relativity is just not enough. That's not a theory of everything. That is required in order to do that will align very much so with what a universal pattern would be to the universe. It is not actually a very good definition of a theory of everything, quote unquote, which is a very bad phrase, actually. We'll get to that because they have the same they are also in agreement with that. But it is not, it's not a good definition. And I thought a lot about this for, years. Like, what is a good definition? And I've said it many times on here, but I'm going to say it again. This is a much better definition. A theory of everything, and it doesn't have to be exactly this definition, but it's something close to this. A theory of everything, quote unquote, is a recognizable, describable, and applicable pattern that occurs in all instances of objective perception and an explanation for such a pattern. Or, as has been written here in the past, and I keep tweaking it, a theory of everything is a recognizable, describable, and predictable pattern that occurs in all instances of objective observation and an explanation for such a pattern. So this final part, and an explanation for such a pattern, means that it must include its own cause. It is fundamentally a pattern in which you can recognize, describe, meaning you need the language to do it. So yes, it is limited by the language that you have available to you. And I've talked about this as well. We don't yet have the language widely known in order to accurately describe, fundamental reality. It must be recognizable. It is recognizable. People can see it. That doesn't mean they can describe it. That doesn't mean that they can apply it, and that doesn't mean that that they can predict it. But you need to be able to predict it in order to apply it. You need to be able to recognize it in order to describe it. You need to be able to describe it in order to predict it. These are all kind of built on each other, but the one that really is important here that we are still struggling with is this step. So, first step, recognizable. Second step, describable. Third step is predictable. And then fourth step is applicable. We're still on step 2, describable pattern that occurs in all instances of objective observation or perception, and you need to be able to define that accurately and understand what that means. And an explanation for such pattern. This is where science, the current scientific community, even once they all get on the bandwagon of a quote-unquote theory of everything, they will fail at that one. They will. That doesn't mean that they won't get halfway there, enough of the way there to get it to be applicable and things like that. Probably. But they're going to fail at the true explanation. I just think they will. Even if they say it, they won't. I don't think they will internalize it. There's reasons for that. But, alright, let's see. Just joined, so I'm not sure if you've already said this, but this reminds me of Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Yeah, definitely. 100%. Like the triune system in my model. The trialic system or triune or trinitarian system occurs in everybody's model. But if you have it, that's good. That means you're onto something. There are similarities, but mine is the toe. Yeah, it might be. But you gotta fight for it, I guess. And you got to know, like, there's one thing that is said in this talk is that, and I'm not taking myself out of this, and I'm not accusing anybody. I'm accusing everybody of this, myself included, actually. But is that there is ego driving this, like, this debate, because there is this thought that whoever comes up with this is going to be the next Einstein, basically. And I don't think that that's true, actually. I think that the way in which we go about this one is different. It's not going to be, you're going to be the next Watson or Crick or Einstein or, Feynman. It's like there's going to be multiple people and multiple levels of these theories proposed. There's going to be a geometric unity going to be basically correct. There's going to be constructor theory as basically correct. There's going to be sentient singularity theory as basically correct. But there is a level that is the most foundational, and then the others are more applicable. And so there isn't one that's more useful than the other. And I would actually say that it's almost the opposite. It's like the more concretely useful they are to engineering and things like that, the less fundamental they truly are. And so you need them all. There's this, I guess, I'll explain this part later, but it's not which one is right. It's not which one is the toe. It's which one of these proposed, quote unquote theories of everything, which I think that's just a terrible name no matter what, is more fundamental than the other. And then we need to order them. And that's how we're going to make sense of the universe. It's not going to be like, which one's right? And we have to cut out the rest. And you're going to fail if you try and do that, because there's so many that are right. There's literally endless. It's said in the Bible of the closer you get to, and I forgot where, but it's predicted that the closer you get to basically the end times is your sons and daughters will prophesy, and it's like everybody's going to come up with a theory of everything. And look at what is happening. All of a sudden, overnight, everybody has a theory of everything. And they're all basically saying the same thing. And so trying to deduce which one is right and which one is wrong is literally going to be a useless and endless pursuit. It's literally useless. I think it is. I think this is part of why we're failing, is because, what if we just said, okay, these ones are right, and there's even more that are right, but these ones are, linked to things that we're trying to apply or utilize, and from there we're going to rank order them in terms of fundamentality. Much better idea. All of a sudden you can make progress overnight. Literally overnight you can make progress. You can be like, constructor theory is above geometric unity, and geometric unity is above the exceptionally simple theory of everything from Garrett Lisi, and sentient singularity theory is above constructor theory. And you can do that. And I'm not saying that's the correct order, probably, but there's way more that you can include, so that even that order doesn't really matter that much, because what if we throw in the autodidactic universe? What if we throw in conscious agent theory from Donald Hoffman, or any of the others? You have to find their place, and it might not even be relevant to include all of them, depending on your goal. So that's the thing, is what's your goal? If you don't have a goal, then we need to stop arguing about this. I had a goal with sentient singularity theory at the start, and then it morphed into actually a different goal when I had to define it, which I wasn't really intending on doing. I didn't really care. But if you're going to argue that one model is more fundamental than the others, then you have to show why. And if you're going to argue that one is more applicable in a certain context, then you have to show why. And everything will matter to that. The name, the structures that you most link it to. I mean, everything. And I will say, I don't think sentient singularity theory is in its current instantiation, the most useful when it comes to warp transportation or something like that. But that doesn't mean it wouldn't help. Certainly would, if you looked at it in the right way, but that doesn't mean that it's the best. Probably geometric unity is the best if you're going to try and go warp. But that's because That's part of Eric Weinstein's goal. Goals are essential to the framework of the theory. And it's never been my goal to go warp speed. You can... Dude, I want to send you the theory. Like I said, if anybody wants to join our open discussions on Discord on Thursdays at 7 p.m., you have to send me a message asking me for the link to join, and then you can come in. You can talk about anything you want, and I'll go listen. But I've made it a habit of not looking much beyond the abstracts of most people's theories, to be honest, because I can pretty much tell within a few seconds that you're onto something, and that's all I really care about. And it's not because, and I can already tell that you're onto something, Roy. Like, I'm not belittling you, but I know I can tell that a lot of people are onto something. But you know, I'm doing my thing, and if you want to talk about it in a Discord call, then I'm happy to do that. But all right, so, and like I said, lots of people are onto stuff, so it's not belittling anyone. But here, first clip. Let's go.
Are in the sociological standpoint makes an odd statement within the community. If you say that you're working on the theory of everything and someone's not working on sociological standpoint makes an odd.
Here.
They have 2 minutes each, and we're going to start off with Brian Greene. Brian, is it possible to find a theory of everything?
Well, I should say at the outset that I am not a fan of the phrase theory of everything, because the number of issues that it raises, some of which you summarized in your opening remarks quite well, are enormous. And it also, from a sociological standpoint, makes an odd statement within the community. If you say that you're working on the theory of everything and someone's not working on it or something like it, then what are they working on? Nothing? And so it's not a good phrasing to use, even though it is quite commonplace. Instead, I think a better phrasing is the search for ever deeper principles that unify our understanding of the world. And by that, I simply mean you could explain the world by simply giving a list of all of the physical facts about the world. It would be a very unwieldy explanation of the world. It wouldn't give you much insight at all. So that's why that's typically not the approach we take. Instead, we try to find patterns in the world, encapsulate those patterns in physical law, and then be able to describe a wealth of phenomenon from a few principles. And the smaller the number of principles and the greater the range of phenomena we can describe, the better and more potent we consider our explanations. And historically, that's exactly what has happened, even if that wasn't initially the motivation, right? I mean, Isaac Newton showed that physics here on Earth and physics up there in the sky are all governed by the same basic law of gravity. And then you've got Maxwell and others in the 1800s showing that electricity and magnetism, Faraday, come together into a unified theory of electricity and magnetism. They're deeply related patterns that put things together. Einstein.
Whoa. Okay. Sorry for the zooming a bit. But exactly. Patterns. That's what we are looking for. And as I've said on here before, I've been like mocked basically, and I don't say that to complain, but like just to show the current state of, you know, those educated by our institutions. And I'm not saying everybody that represents everybody, but it is the norm. It is absolutely the norm. As basically like, you know, oh, you're just looking for patterns. No shit. That's the point. Like, you're looking for patterns. You're looking for a unifying pattern that pervades and you know, all of reality from a certain perspective, at least. And that perspective would be an objective perspective. And, you know, you can then figure out what that means. But it's a pattern. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for a pattern. And you're also you must have a cause for that pattern. It has to, and that cause must be inevitable, okay? Which is to say, it is, I don't want to say it causes itself, but more like there's no way it isn't, it doesn't exist. It just exists. It's like maybe sentience just exists always, and because it must exist, because in order for any information to exist, it must be informing, and therefore informing of someone, and that information must be internally coherent, and that coherence must exist for anything to exist, and therefore, you know, you just get this loop of information processing at the very fundamental, you know, level of reality. It's just a single loop of information processing, or a single sentient being, basically. Like, this is kind of a requirement of the initial cause, because if you said something like, you know, well, you run into this problem a lot. It's like, well, who created the universe? God. Well, who created God? No one. Okay, that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but it actually does but you have to be able to explain it. Information must, by definition, be internally coherent. It must be coherent, at least. It must have coherence. And if there's only one bit of information in the universe, then it must be coherent with itself. And if that's the case, then in that structure you have information, one bit of information, one informer and one informed, all in one. And that's that triality, trinity perspective, basically, as it's just three different perspectives on the various attributes of one object, essentially. So you could say time is past, present, and future, and you know, spatial maneuvering, you could say it's length, width, and height, but that's really spatial outlining, and that's not really spatial maneuvering, but that's an objective perspective of spatial outlining. But really what it is it's forwards, backwards, and current location is really what it is. Because if you are the maneuverer within space, then that's what it is. It's not length, width, and height. That's a God's eye view, basically. We cannot have objectivity without seeing reality from multiple different angles, and that is only possible through multiple theories. That's true, basically. It seems to me that the only way to find truth is to find objectivity. This is beautifully said on Tyler's website. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. I'm glad that it works. You are afraid. I don't know if you're talking to me, but I'm not afraid of anybody's theory. There is a singular problem and a singular solution. There is no problem, really. And there's infinite problems and no problem, and then there is a singular answer, always. They're equally true. This is one problem in multiple ways of finding it. Yes, that's true, but I'm looking at your math equation here. But, like, there is, so like, is 10 times 3 plus 1, or 9 times 3 plus 4, which one is more true? So like both are true. What perspective are you looking at? In my model, this is an equation that comes up in a certain instances, and it comes up in two ways depending on if you're looking at something from the inside out or the outside in. If you're looking at it from the inside out, it comes up as 9 times 3 plus 4. So 27 plus 4 is 31. Or if you're looking at it from the outside in, then it comes up as 10 times 3 plus 1. So, 30 plus 1. And each of these numbers is very important and actually representative of like what the problem is and the perspective that you're looking at it from. Like what is important to focus on, I guess. They have hints as to what's important to focus on in each of these, but two different perspectives. Each of these equations is a perspective, and but it's one path. It's just like, are you going this north-south in the path, or are you going, I guess, like, you could just say, are you going south to north, or are you going north to south? That's a better way of putting it. But in reality, it would be like, are you going north-south in the path, or are you going east-west in the path? And that sounds also crazy, because it's like, those are two perpendicular paths. How can they be one path? But it's not really, it's one path. It's like, it's one destination, two paths. It's tough, man. It's tough stuff. But Brian Greene basically said he's not a fan of the phrase theory of everything, and I'm not either. Because there is a theory of sentient singularity proposes that it is not a theory of everything. It is a theory of everyone. And that there is a theory of everyone. But then there's a bunch of different theories of things, okay? And because things are perceptions by sentient beings. So beings perceive things. And a being is a being is a being. But a thing is defined by the goal and the perspective and all these that perspective that comes from countless different parameters that are included in whatever perspective those beings are looking at that thing in. So things, all you need to know though is things comes from beings. Things are perceived by beings. And so if that's the case, there's a light bulb is a thing, a computer is a thing, a apartment is a thing, a ukulele is a thing. How can you have a theory of all of these things? How can a theory of a ukulele and a theory of a light bulb and a theory of an apartment all be, similar or the same? Well, you have to kind of have a unified outlook on all of these things. And the unified outlook on all these things is that they are the perceptions of sentient beings. And you can then have a pattern that comes from the description of that sentient being and its constraints and degrees of freedom and structures and desires and things like that, motivations. And that is the theory of everything, quote unquote, but it's actually a theory of everyone. I'm not a fan of the phrase the theory of everything either. Okay. Michael Shermer was asked, just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over this. But I will say it. If we will be able to have a theory of everything, and his answer is not beyond the fundamental sciences, because once you get into biological sciences and social sciences, everything becomes emergent. And I don't agree with him, but I also get what he's saying. But here. Then Brian Greene basically says, no, that's not true. He says there isn't anything but the fundamental laws, and that the fundamental laws are the backbone of the emergent laws, and those that are laws that are emergent and rules that are emergent emerge from fundamental laws. So if you know all the fundamental laws, then you can predict all the emergent laws. And if that's the case, then you can actually have a theory that transcends into the physical, into the less fundamental sciences like social sciences and biological sciences. I do agree with this, but there is a point in which they say things like, you can't, Eric Weinstein says in this, you cannot compute, just because you know all the rules doesn't mean you can, you have computability, and that Brian Greene says there's nothing else, and Michael Shermer then agrees, and he's like, there's no supernatural being or ghost in the machine. I don't like the term supernatural. I don't know what that means. There's no such thing as supernatural unless... There's no such thing as supernatural. There's just natural. Either everything is supernatural, or in which case nothing is natural, or everything is natural and nothing is supernatural. It's a bad word. Supernatural. It just is. But it almost seems like a good word because it's got super in front of it, just like superposition, which is a good word, or super literal, which is a good word. But supernatural is not. And that's because more of the way that we use it than actually the term itself. But basically, there's one thing that they're missing in this explanation, which is choice. Brian Greene said in this, he's like, there's no such thing as free will. It's like, first of all, what is free will? Define free will first before we say whether or not it exists. But free will is just choice. And yes, choice exists. But there is a definition of choice. When you open your fridge every day, that does not mean that you are making a choice every time you grab something to eat. But if there's something in there that is counter, that causes you to make a choice to go with or to contradict your instincts, for the sake of, something that you know to be a higher truth, that would maybe be an instance of free will. But free will is just choice. Choice manifests in certain particular instances in which you know something objectively to be true, but it is counter to your instinctual wiring. But making the choice to go with that, it would be counter to your instinctual wiring. Those instances allow for you to make a true choice. And it might not even be in that particular instance that you have a choice, but it might be in overall, over time, which path are you choosing to go towards, which would be free will. Are you trying to, kick a bad habit that your instincts are guiding you towards, but objectively to be wrong? Or are you trying to give up a food that you like, but it's not allowed in your religion? And these are instances in which free will might have, not even might, I think do have the ability, it does have the ability to manifest in those instances. But choice is part of the equation. And so they'll say things like, well, a theory of everything, it would allow you to not predict exactly what would happen in every instance, but it would enable you to predict the probabilities of what would happen in every instance. And I actually disagree with this. I think that probability is an illusion that occurs over time, in a strange way. But it's not. It's a probability is weird. It's like a prediction about the probability, almost, or it's a prediction about the future outcomes, about the distribution of future outcomes. Is really what it is, and that's not the same as how we think about probability. Really, I mean, you can hear that and you can be like, yeah, that's obviously probability, but it's not, because what it is saying is that in reality, for every single instance that actually a choice is made, your probabilistic prediction has nothing to do with it. And that, the determined outcome that occurs in each of those instances is 100% determined always by the choice of the chooser. Which means that the true probability always, from a theory of everything type of perspective, is not 30%, 20%, 50%. It's like 100% always. It's always 0 or 100. And there's a funny phrase that if you watch my streams, I say a lot. It's like every time I see some kind of crazy looking coincidence, quote unquote, which doesn't exist, at least meaningless coincidences don't exist, I'll look at that and I'll be like, what are the odds of that? Probably 100%. And it's a funny phrase because probably 100% is just like a funny thing. The more you think about it, kind of the funnier it becomes. But it's also probably 100% accurate. Because the choice, there is not a ghost in the machine is alive. This is Eric Weinstein's definition of theory of everything, though, and it's very good. At least here.
To be given meaning and to evade Brian's criticism has to be narrowed. It's not the colloquial sense. It has to do with finding the rules of chess if the universe was chess by observing chess games. It doesn't tell you how to play chess, and it doesn't necessarily tell you who created chess, right? So what I've tried to say concretely is that I believe that our particular universe, and just to give you grist for actual debate where we will disagree, I am betting that the universe.
Okay. Where he's going next, we're going to go. But it's interesting because he says it's about predicting the rules of chess, but not necessarily the creator of who created chess. This is almost impossible, I think. And I think this is why geometric unity is having some struggles. And I've noticed the struggles. And I really noticed the struggles because, well, we'll get to it in a minute. But, I mean, I really see the struggles of geometric unity more than I think probably anybody else. And that sounds like a profound statement, but like I've called what geometric unity was from the very beginning, and I've been right every single time. And it's been like 2 years of this at this point. But it's just a lower level model of sentient singularity theory, or at least it's aligned with it. It's not the same theory, but it's aligned with it to a very high degree. So that's not a criticism, by the way. That means I think it's right. So I think geometric unity is right. It's running into major issues because it's avoiding its implications, but he knows that, and he kind of gets at that in this next clip right here. You almost can't really have a theory of chess without that only explains the rules of chess, doesn't explain the creator of chess. You have to explain who's the player of chess, who's the creator of chess, and what are the rules. Not just what are the rules of chess. You need to also have, like, the theory of chess is the theory of the players, the theory of the creator, or it includes the creator of chess as part of it. It includes the rules as part of chess, the theory of chess, and it also includes the players of chess. There is no theory of chess without players, and there is no chess without creator of chess, and there is no, obviously there is no game of chess without the rules of chess. Like, it's just emergent. So, but this is just to show, like, why I'm making the claims that I'm making about, geometric unity. Like, here's a claim. Like, geometric unity implies creationism. Okay, like, that, you can't have a theory that is the rules outside of the implications and just kind of, I don't think you can. Maybe you can. Maybe I'm wrong. But like, I don't see how that works. You need to contextualize the rules for people. It's like trying to explain the rules of chess without ever saying that it was created by a person and that it's played by people. Like, you'd be like, knights can move this way and pawns can move this way. And people will be like, but how are the pawns and knights moving? You're like, knights can move this way and pawns can move this way. You need to explain what, like, you can't have this stuff without, you know, detached of the creator and context, I guess, which is always going to be sentient beings. But here.
Is determined by a four-dimensional orientable manifold with a unique spin structure, that would be sufficient to generate three families of fermions with the observed quantum numbers.
There's your triune, but I know he actually says it's a duality and not it's not trialic. One of them's an imposter. I get what he's saying by that too, but I don't like the word imposter.
As well as geometric laws for the metric, and also just to possibly give some region for debate. I would also say that quantum gravity is not the only way of harmonizing the standard model with Einstein's theory of general relativity.
Okay, so I did not write this based on his definition just there. This has been written for years. It's been tweaked, you know, over years, but pretty much the same. Sentient Singularity Theory describes the totality of existence as a singularity of sentience that is creating additional sentient singularities within itself. Sentience is the phenomenon of feeling, sensations, and emotions. Singularity is defined as something that is one distinct unit or something that is especially unique. Sentient singularity theory denotes a singularity as a structure that has the property of infinite oneness, such as a Mobius strip, or one being that is composed of many beings, such as a multicellular organism. Sentient singularity theory can therefore be understood to imply that everything that exists is part of a single universal sentient being that is producing an infinite number of other sentient beings. These additional singularities of sentience or self-aware beings are arranged into a nested quasi-periodic fractal pattern of stacked halonic structures with a single self-reflective knot of perception heading an assembly body integrating multiple entangled strings of information. And here's where we get to what I was talking about. A sentient singularity observes four primary perspectives, which are inside, outside, separate, and oneness. These four perspectives are interdependent and entangled, and the awareness of one of them entails the awareness of all four. The primary perspectives enable the perception and orientation of oneself within objective relationships that transcend beyond relativity. This is basically the first beginning of geometric unity as well, right here. But that's because geometric unity is correct. I'm giving it props. I'm not tearing it down. But you can't have a theory of chess that doesn't include the players. And also, I think, the creator of chess. You have to say, chess was created by a person. It's played by people, and these are the rules. And you can't be like, the theory of chess is, here's the rules. It doesn't work. People won't, it doesn't mean it's not correct. It just means, like, we can't place it. And here's the thing, though. To Eric Weinstein's credit,
early, and that there was a little bit of a three-card Monty played in the late 70s, early 80s, where we went from unified field theory towards quantum gravity, which very much favored quantum field theorists and what used to be high energy physics, which has now become no energy physics, because most of it isn't really about physics at all. I mean, were we to read through the archive today, none of us could contain our sense of embarrassment of doing this in front of 1,000 people. So I think that that's our paper repository. I think that the important thing to say is that a theory of everything as a physical theory is one which demotivates physicists to keep working on the problem of the rules of chess if the universe was chess, and hands it over to philosophers. We don't know where the number 7 comes from, but I know very few mathematicians who spend their time worrying about the origin of that numeral. So I think that it's very important to actually understand that the most audacious thing that we can say is that we are extremely close in some of our estimations to a theory of everything properly scoped so as not to include the issue of effective theories, computation, or the origins of an initial set. I don't think that and Catherine, you actually entered the debate when you said that in your initial statement, so I think you're now a participant. And I heartily disagree with your opening statement that it should contain itself. In fact, it should go over to the philosophers and theologians to ask what the initial conditions are all about. And by the way, by initial, I don't mean in time, because time itself is part of the story. I think what I'm really trying to say is you have to postulate that there is something rather than nothing. And then the idea is that no physicist should be motivated to continue that search.
Boom! Dang, I hit the desk. That was awesome. But also I disagree with it. Because there is nothing outside the physical. There's no separation between the physical and the mental. What we perceive as physical is just the thoughts of we're minds within minds. And the minds and the thoughts of the minds that we're in are perceived by us as concrete physical reality. And there is no way around this. And that means that you can't really get rid of physicality. And I like that he said, then we hand it off to the philosophers and the theologians, because I think it's very important that philosophers who are not shy about, the about including theology, and I don't mean from the Bible. I mean, and I'm somebody that does read scripture, but I'm not going to use it as a scientific argument. I do use it all the time as a life, reference, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to, include it in my paper. You didn't hear in Sentient Singularity Theory even the word God, because it don't need to. My goal is to explain in it, if you read through it, it's okay, existence is a singularity of sentience. That is basically God. There is no separation between theology and physics at this point. And philosophy, because this is all about perspectives. My philosophy professor in college, the most important thing he ever taught me was philosophy is the study of perspective. It's okay, well, in Sentient Singularity Theory, there's 4 primary perspectives that every sentient being has. And they are entangled because the perception of one entails or implies and enables whatever the perception of the other 3. And so basically, theology, philosophy, and physics are one. And I understand the desire to be okay, here's where we draw the line, and physics is, the issue is this. Quantum mechanics is not the same field as general relativity and thermodynamics and Newtonian, equations. Like, these are not the same fields. And we already stepped over the line with the standard model and quantum mechanics, and we just didn't even realize it. We stepped outside of physics, and you can't even understand what is an electron. How do you know that it's the intersection of waves of perception, or waves of information processing between two minds? How do you know that, when you're like, oh, it's an excitation of strings in a fiber bundle? It's like, what's the bundle? Is it a sentience of self-referential, is it a self-referential knot? That's perceiving itself within itself? This is, how do you separate that from philosophy? You can't. You really can't. And I understand Eric Weinstein's motivation, but I don't understand how you accomplish what he wants to accomplish either. I don't. You could prove to everybody that you're correct with an experiment and never place your theory within context. And all that will happen is that it will be misinterpreted. And that's almost like an inevitability once things go, macro. But I don't think people that work in physics understand the standard model, or where it came from, or why they made it. It's like, why are some things up? Why are some things strange? Why are some things beauty? They don't know. I don't think they know. If they did, I don't think that they would have the perspective on the world that they have. So this is tough. It's tough. But I think Eric is correct. And I will say, even though I disagree with him, hats off to him even saying theologians. I love that. That takes balls. It really does, to even say that one word in this discussion. And you got to give people credit where it's due. And as far as the initial goes, I have in my paper that's coming, slowly but surely, a model that discusses the initial conditions and why they're there, and it is outside time. Time is an emergent phenomenon that exists when there's multiplicity of sentience. You can't have it without a multiplicity of sentience. So outside of multiplicity of sentience, and you only have singularity of sentience, then you have, or even no sentience, which doesn't exist, then you have no time. And that's why I used to say before the beginning, but then sentience exists, or consciousness exists. I changed consciousness to sentience because nobody knows what consciousness really means, and it's not as fundamental as sentience, actually, but or it's not as contextualizing. But then I changed it to beyond the beginning, and it's funny, that phrase from Toy Story is like, to infinity and beyond. It's like, it's fascinating, just the use of that phrase and how it kind of sticks with all of us. I bet you if he was like, to infinity and before and after, it's like, we would have never, it just doesn't have the same ring to it. But it's because it's also just, it doesn't work. But there is a beyond the beginning, and it is outside of time. So I like everything that Eric said there. I just don't agree with him that it's like possible. Okay, actually, also he goes on to say that for the sake of time, I'm going to try and speed this up a bit, that our theories should be bold, basically, and that they should challenge what we think we know. They shouldn't just barely build on that which we think we know. They should challenge what we think we know about everything. They should be like, do you really understand evolution? Do you really think that adaptation is everything that there is to evolution? Or maybe there's a secondary part to evolution. And that doesn't mean you're like, you really think evolution exists? Because if you start doing that, it's like you're starting over. You don't start from scratch. But, you can add context. Be like, maybe there's a secondary part of evolution. My theory seems to state that there is. But and that recontextualizes things. It doesn't erase it. Evolution exists, but it doesn't mean that creation doesn't exist. They're not even mutually exclusive ideas. I think that in reality they're dependent. But totally dependent. There's no way that they're not dependent. And there's another basically idea that is discussed in this discussion between Sabine and Brian and Eric and Michael Shermer and Brian Greene mentions this, and he's like, there is this drive to unity over time, and in everything. He's like, there used to be polytheistic, religions, and then it kind of like all became a monotheistic religion and united under one cause and power. And I thought that was an interesting observation that he had, and it's also true. But it just is an inevitable way of thinking. It's just deduction. And you can deduce to one.
Sabine,
Okay. This is another thing that Eric had said in this. And Sabine agreed with him, and good for her for doing so, because physicists don't get it. And these other people in this talk, like, literally almost laughed at this.
1952 and 1953.
And here.
This question changed in 1952. In less than 6 months between 1952 and 1953, we successfully fused nuclei and caused an island in the Pacific to disappear, as well as we entered the cell and found the three-dimensional structure of DNA and the genetic code 10 years after. We're going to die here very soon, and by soon I mean a few hundred years at most, almost certainly. We're having a cigar party and a fireworks display while perched on a propane tank. You can see
How's that for a visual?
the fact that we're all wearing these masks. People haven't even figured out that they're going to have to buy hazmat suits if we start having thermonuclear exchanges. I'm not kidding at all about this. So the new reason to do this isn't the beauty of gazing into the night sky or man's quest to know his place in the universe. If we don't figure out how to spread out, we are running one single experiment with godlike powers and the wisdom of morons based on our current political leadership. There is no way that this terminates well. Furthermore, there is no faster than light travel inside of general relativity. So you can look up at the night sky and you can know more or less that unless you're betting on time dilation and other exotic effects and wormholes, we aren't going anyplace. There are only 3 habitable spheres. Now, the world's richest people, 2 of them, Bezos and Musk, are focused on rockets to get us into space. One of us thinks that we can diversify with 3 spheres. The other seems to think that Gerald K. O'Neill's circular space stations with artificial gravity are the way to go. Bezos actually makes more sense. Neither of these make much sense at all. And the odd thing to say, and again, that I don't want to go too much into social commentary, is that if we could only get physics to be vaguely phallic in shape, load it with high explosives and oxidizers, we could get fully funded, and I think we'd probably have a theory within 20 years. At the moment, nobody seems to be motivated on the idea that you break it, you bought it. physics has a ton of social responsibility. We unleashed this power. I encourage everyone to read Edward Teller's letter to Leo Szilard at the end of the Manhattan Project and to reevaluate their theories of Edward Teller. His idea was that war had to become so unthinkable that we could never have another. And 75 years of this peace have dulled our sensibilities, forgetting that nuclear weapons have not gone away and we've added biologicals. If we're not very careful, we are going to have to go farther through the valley of death that physics has led us into if we are ever to escape, diversify, and have some hope that some of us at least will make it in the long term.
Oh, Eric, I'm off on a tangent from the theory of everything, but I'm feeling a bit depressed now. Sabine,
You have a chance to survive, Catherine. You have an opportunity, because you know Hamiltonian dynamics and Lagrangians and all that, to work on an escape plan. In fact, I would say we have an obligation I think Teller's comment was to tie the toe of the genie from the bottle we helped it to escape. If the theory of everything exists, it renders Einstein and the Standard Model as effective theories to be
To tie the toe of the genie to the bottle that we helped it escape. Dang, I've never heard that before. That's pretty brilliant. But you can see that they basically are laughing, except Sabine goes on to say, that she actually agrees with Eric that physicists underestimate their responsibility to the world, and I agree with her. But I also think that most of these physicists today don't even think about them having a grand impact on the world that has serious, human consequences. And, there was a guy, and he recently tweeted that he was like, Teller helped create. It was Tim Nguyen, by the way, and he was like, Teller helped create the atom bomb, and this person helped create this, and what do the theorists of today, what do they have as their roles in the wars to come, basically. And I was like, I said something that was just ignored by him, and it was like, what is the responsibility of theorists, and what role should they play in the wars to come? Not like what can they do? This is the Jurassic Park comment of, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should. And it's like, yeah, this is very important, I think. But at the same time, as important as it is, I believe that there is a purpose to this universe, and that God's will be done, and that we will be all right. And, things will play out the way that they are meant to. And that doesn't mean that people should stop doing things. Do what you think is right. That's what you should do. And do what you think is good. And that is going to lead to the best path to the inevitable outcome. There's multiple paths to the inevitable outcome. Some, they're not saying that they're that different. I don't know how different they can be, but there is at least slight differences between those paths. And if you want the best one, I would suggest that we all do what we think is good along the way. And, I don't really understand the whole spreading out thing, but that Eric says. I do. I mean, it seems obvious, but at the same time, it's like if you eliminate relativity or distance as a constraint, then it's almost like you have gotten rid of it as a buffer as well. And if you can go from one side of the universe to the other like that, then how is that even the equivalent of getting away from other people? And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just the perception that would occur from that of us just having our own space that would cause us to not even pursue, altercations with each other. And because obviously if we wanted to have an altercation with each other, we could, because we've eliminated distance as a buffer. But maybe it's the perception of the addition of distance and space that would give us the perspective necessary for us to not even pursue altercations. I don't know. That could be the case. If that's not the case, then I don't see the point. But I also recognize that very well could be the case. And because, if you could send a nuke from one side of the universe to the other in a second, when now it takes, a few hours or maybe an hour, max to send it from one side of the earth to the other. Did you really eliminate, did you really spread out? No, but at the same time, maybe the perception of spreading out would lower the drive for altercations. But I don't know. So then what's interesting is Michael Shermer said this.
We'd be far better putting the money into research on game theory, for example, and how political leaders can solve conflicts, or how nations can solve conflicts, and what's the best structure for governance of a collection of people to reduce or attenuate the possibility of massive conflict that could then escalate to using nuclear weapons, because we can't unlearn nuclear physics, and somebody on Mars 5,000 years from now could reinvent nuclear weapons because the knowledge is there. So it's better, I think, to put it in the human realm of how do we prevent people from having those sorts of conflicts that could ever escalate to nuclear conflict. And there we've actually made a lot of progress. We understand why leaders do what they do, and but maybe there's a completely different, say, I don't know if you call it a theory of everything in politics, but let's say I wrote this essay called Governing Mars. So, all right, what kind of governance should we take with us? Well, we've learned a lot here on Earth, on the blue planet, so maybe we should take the best of what we have to the red planet. But maybe Elon's engineers or his social scientists or whoever, or the Martians themselves centuries from now will come up with some completely different way of structuring the economy and political systems that we can't even think of. That's way better than democracy. Democracy is great, but it's not perfect. So maybe there's something that none of us can think of. And there I would like to say we should have funding for that. Just like, okay, you think of something completely new that no one's ever thought of. Okay, second part.
Okay, I love this because I came from the political realm, and what got me interested in this entire pursuit was not physics. It was politics. And it was the recognition that we were doomed, because of technology and politics, and our wisdom was going down over every single year, and our technological abilities were going up every single year. And just imagine that. You're going to reach an apex point all of a sudden at some point where you can do so much destruction and you have no wisdom to keep it from happening in the first place. And I think Eric Weinstein calls this the twin nuclei problem. I didn't have any fancy name for it, but I just realized we were effed. And then I started thinking about what is a game changer, if there is any real game changer, and I realized artificial general intelligence, quote unquote, would be that game changer, and it is the black swan event that changes the rules of the game, it seems. And so on my website you can see in 2014 I began the task of attempting to philosophically map the necessities and also motivations of inevitable motivations of artificial general intelligence. I chose to start from scratch and build from there, and basically it led to me trying to understand self-awareness, and then I realized that the patterns that I was mapping lined up with the standard model, and they started giving me some intuitive talents in physics, and so yeah, and then I realized it applied to many fields. And the most interesting part of this endeavor for me has not been, what is the physics, how do we do warp transportation or anything like that. It is the human element. It's like, how do we know what is the right way, the right path, and the right way to look at humanity and ourselves? Because there is. And so with what Michael Shermer said there, I actually think that what he's saying is very much part of the theory of everything, quote unquote, or aka the theory of everyone. Obviously, it's very it's even, that word is even, or term is even better applied in what Michael Shermer's talking about, because it's very obvious that we're talking about everyone. And like, one day we will come to the realization that as an atom is a sentient being, but until we come to that realization at large, then we are stuck with just that, cells and up might be sentient beings, and at least human beings are sentient beings, and human beings make up social, economic and political institutions and structures that we are totally lost in even defining the goals of. And if you can't define the goals of those structures, then you can't actually deduce whether or not your structure is correct. And there is actually a proper way to structure a government. There is an actual structure of a community, and you can't, it's not, this is one community and this is another community, and these are different ways to organize a community. It's like, no. Every government has 6 castes, or every society has 6 castes. And those castes, you can move between the castes however you want. They're not fixed. You're not stuck in any caste, but the castes are fixed. It's like there are things that you can deduce, and what is the right way to do immigration? What is the right way to under the hereditary constraints of your nationhood? Like, this is something that actually has an answer, and it's woven into the theory of everyone. That's what it is. So it's not a separate task from what everybody else there is trying to do. And then another thing that was said, and by the way, if you're watching this and you are enjoying it, please hit the like button, subscribe, share this. Like I said, tomorrow or the next day, I will have all of the timestamps included and thumbnail put in. But Eric Weinstein said that unless you try to make a theory of everything, or you're trying to navigate this world, you can't actually see the true state of academia. And I totally agree with him on this. This is like, it's actually disgusting when you actually see the true state of academia. And I say that without any happiness. It's disgusting is the only way to put it. I'll just let him explain, because yeah, he did a good job.
Unless you cross fields and unless you've released the theory of everything, you have no idea of the current state.
Yeah, unless you cross fields. I love that he said that. That's so true. It's a threat to the system when you cross fields, because you're undermining people's authority, institutionally anointed authority.
Academics. I just called, for example, Peter Woit, who runs the blog Not Even Wrong, and is a colleague of Brian's at Columbia. And, of course, I read his new foray into the world of theories of everything, as I read Stephen Wolfram's and Garrett Leesy's and every one of these. And in general, everyone who releases one has the same reaction, which is, even if you come from a position where you have a PhD and you come from the mainstream, the issue of reputational dynamics is such that everyone is looking for a kill shot. How do I make Peter Voigt go away so I never have to listen to him again? How do I protect my precious reputation so that effectively I can dismiss my colleagues and continue to stay in the game? Because the main product here is that we have a certain amount of prestige. Now, I've made the decision that you cannot actually pursue this within the academic community. Stephen Wolfram has bounced out, having a company to support his research. Garrett Leesy has made shrewd investments. Julian Barbour translates things. The problem is that we've had a catastrophe in the culture of academics due to the fact that it had a period of rapid expansion. And when that came to an end, it became sort of a Ponzi scheme meets the Hunger Games. So what
I love that.
you find out when you release one of these things is that nobody is really taking these theories seriously.
Sabina, why are people not taking?
Brilliant. Ponzi scheme meets the Hunger Games. So true. That's what it is. It's a Ponzi scheme meets the Hunger Games meets American Idol. That's really, I would include that last one. And it's like, who can put on the best show, who can get the most money from it, and who can take out the other guys so they have no competition in doing so. And that's academia. And unless you cross fields or release a theory of everything, you don't, or you're following others who have, and you're taking them seriously, then you're not going to see this. I think Carl Jung called this circumlocution. I think that's what she said. If the rules of reality is fundamentally four-dimensional, how does this fit with the law of the excluded middle? The truth is equal to reality is two-dimensional essentially. Well, geometric unity states that one of the perceived particles in the triality of families or of the generationality of the fermions is an imposter. And I would call, in my theory, the center is always an intrinsic constraint. So basically you have an extrinsic constraint, which is 1. You have an intrinsic constraint, and you have 2 degrees of freedom. And so this inside-outside separate oneness, extrinsic and intrinsic constraints, and then you have a positive and a negative degree of freedom, essentially, within that. So each one of those two is the center line that the other two reflect across. So you could say time is for us and our maneuvering within space-time, you could say time is the extrinsic constraint because we're subject to it. The intrinsic constraint would be our current location because we're always in our current location, we can't escape it. And the positive degree of freedom would be forwards towards the goal that we have set in space. And then our negative degree of freedom would be backwards away from the goal that we've set. So, if you set the goal of going to Chick-fil-A, forwards to Chick-fil-A or backwards back towards home, and you're always stuck in the current location because it's just, you are always in your current location, that's your intrinsic constraint. And then your extrinsic constraint is your fourth, which is your it's something that you're just subject to. And like us in time, we are just subject to time, at least right now. Now, basically what this shows is that if you're inside of a system, you have a three-dimensional view of around you. But then the system that you're in is that fourth dimensional aspect of it, basically. So that's why space-time is length, width, height, and time. Time is just this, it's not length, width, height, and then past, present, future. That would be six-dimensional. And I think even Roger Penrose said something about, space-time being six-dimensional. And from a certain perspective, I guess you could say that it is. Have you heard of Hermetic philosophy? It's very similar to what you're talking about. Yes, I have heard of Hermetic philosophy. I had a friend that was very into Hermetic philosophy. And I know it generally, but I don't know it well. But I know it's close to what I'm talking about in some ways. Truth is truth. And finally, they end with basically that, and it was Eric that says this, is that we should push for new instantiations of old ideas and not just dismiss things as being false. Because, and this is what I said at the beginning of the stream, is like, if you're like, my theory is the theory and all other theories are false, you're going to go nowhere. But if you're like, this is the context of my theory, that's it, and you have to contextualize it, even in relation to other theories, that's fine. But you have to contextualize it. And just this out of context, mine is true and yours is not, yours is false and mine is true. It's holding us back, and it's motivated by ego. And we all have that, by the way. It took me a while to get to the point, and I didn't even, of what I'm saying now, and I didn't even try to come up with a theory of everything, and I had no physics aspirations. So if I didn't even have physics aspirations, and I still have an ego that I have to watch in this fight, not fight, in this journey. There you go. Then so does everybody else, especially those who are physicists and mathematicians and with academic accreditation, especially, and even philosophers with academic accreditation. I don't have any of these things. I have a degree in finance, so I'm not trying to prove the value of my education at all. I think my education was, for the most part, valueless. I think my greatest value that I got from education was getting away with as much as I could and still, graduating. But, it is important to add context to your theory if you think it's valuable. And it probably is, but you have to show how. And it should not negate the value of another's theory. It shouldn't. If somebody's theory is wrong, then it's wrong on its own. It doesn't need your theory to disprove it. And this is why I used to think it was a fight, and it's not. Because it's not like, this is not the octagon where, you've got a tree and it's geometric unity versus sentient singularity theory, and the next one goes up against constructor theory, and whoever wins that one gets to go up against conscious agent theory. No, this is not how it's going to be. It's going to be, all of these seem to be pretty correct in a lot of ways, and we have to say, what's the goal of this specific one, and how is it useful? And it should not be negating of anyone else's. Everybody's theories or parts of their theory that are wrong are going to be wrong in and of themselves. You don't need to try and beat them. They will fail on their own. And if you truly trust in truth, then you believe that that's just inevitable. But you have to constantly check yourself for it. And I think that all these theories, I think geometric unity is true. I'm not trying to disprove it. And I think that conscious agent theory is true for the most part. And same with, the autodidactic universe, and constructor theory definitely as well. And it's we need to contextualize these. And sometimes we can rely on these different theories to be contextualizing of each other. But they are not disproving of each other. What is false, and what is true, in and of itself, always. With that, thank you, everyone. Please, like I said, hit the like button. Share this if you found it useful and valuable. Subscribe if you found it useful and valuable. I'm really looking forward to this year. I know it's been kind of a slow start, but it's been a good one, I think. I know this is quite off topic, and it is understandable if you want to leave this for a different time, but what is your view of Jesus? Who is he, and how does he fit into your theory? Dang, dude, that is way off topic, but also, like, fascinating. I believe that I'm going to have to save this for another time. But I will say this. I have no desire to sneak in any, there's people will say that anybody who believes in God will sneak in Jesus into their physics. And it's like, I have no desire to sneak anything in to anything. But I will say I'm a Christian, and I'm a Jewish Christian who believes Muhammad was a prophet of God. So, like, take that as however you wish, but, and who believes wholeheartedly in evolution and, breeds recessive genes in snakes and geckos. And so I know, the hereditary aspects of genes and things in front of me all the time. So, like, I will say that it's not, I don't think I believe it's just, I'm going to save this for another day. It's just too long of a topic, but I don't think that, I think more importantly into a theory is like, what's the pattern? And then you can put in, people into that pattern however best matches you. And I'm not personally like an evangelist for who is the Messiah, but I do believe that Jesus was the Messiah. That's my personal belief, and I will say that. I'll leave it at that. And but another day, yes, I will talk about it. I have talked about it here on the stream multiple times, and but if I get into it, it's like that's a whole stream. But I will do a stream on it, but it won't be about Jesus. It will be about what I think is what religion calls the messianic process, or what is the Messiah, which is it does have sentience. It is a sentient being. So I will say that the Messiah is a sentient being, but that's what I'll say for now. But awesome. Gotcha. Thanks for an amazing stream. I'm glad that you thought it was good. So this ended up being good. I know that if I get into it, that's like a whole other hour. But I will touch on it more. I have a stream coming up on evolution, and that one is going to touch a lot on that. So, hi, lovely nerds. Hello, all you lovely nerds out there. Myself included. All right, guys, like I said, like, comment, and share, and I will be back Tuesday next week. If you want to join in to our Discord discussions, our open Discord calls, we talk about anything that you want to talk about. It goes on for hours. They're a blast. Message me privately on Instagram at Tyler Marshall Goldstein or at Theory of Everyone, and I will send you the link to our Discord. Our calls are going to be always at 7 p.m. Pacific time, and on Thursdays. We also have been having these live streams on Tuesdays at 6:30. We're about to have, daylight savings time kick in or whatever. I'm from Arizona. I don't really understand this still, even though I live now where it is a thing. But so I think I will have them at closer to 7 p.m. Pacific time, but they will stay Tuesday evening. So I'll let you guys know more about that, but it's probably going to be 7 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesdays. So with that, thank you everyone, and I will see you Tuesday or Thursday of this week. Peace.